pages of a new beginning. The October rain fell in sheets across the downtown streets, turning the evening commute into a symphony of honking horns and splashing tires. Jackson Reed pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders, cursing himself for dismissing his driver earlier. The notification that had appeared on his phone an hour ago still burned in his mind. Breaking. Reed Energy Solutions accused of stealing competitors' data. 3 years building the most promising clean energy company in the country, and Gerald Mercer of Pinnacle Tech was trying to destroy it all with manufactured lies. Jackson's legal team had assured him they would handle it, but the public relations nightmare had already begun. He ducked under the awning of a shop, shaking water from his hair. Through the window, warm golden light spilled onto the sidewalk, illuminating a chalkboard sign that read chapters and chai, books, tea, and shelter from the storm. Jackson smiled despite himself. Perhaps the universe had a sense of humor, after all. The bell above the door jingled softly as he stepped inside. The scent of cinnamon, old books, and brewing coffee embraced him immediately. The bookstore cafe was small, but thoughtfully arranged. Wooden shelves lined with colorful spines, comfortable armchairs nestled in corners, and a counter at the back where a woman was arranging freshly baked cookies on a plate. She looked up at the sound of the bell and smiled. "Looks like you could use a towel and something warm." Her voice was kind, her eyes a deep brown that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. A name tag pinned to her sweater read Olivia. "That obvious, huh?" Jackson ran a hand through his dripping hair. "Just a bit." She disappeared behind the counter and returned with a small towel. "Here. I can't promise it's fancy, but it's dry. That's all I need right now. Thank you." As he took the towel, Jackson realized this was the first genuine interaction he'd had in weeks that wasn't tinged with business agendas or media scrutiny. "What can I get you?" Olivia asked, returning to her spot behind the counter. "We're known for our chai, but given your current state, I'd recommend the hot chocolate with cinnamon. It's basically therapy in a mug." P. Jackson laughed. "Sold. I could definitely use some therapy tonight." While she prepared his drink, he took in the nearly empty cafe. A college student typed furiously on a laptop in the corner, and an elderly man dozed in an armchair with an open book on his lap. "Slow night?" Jackson asked, as she handed him a steaming mug decorated with tiny books. "Thursdays usually are," Olivia shrugged, "but I don't mind. Gives me time to catalog new arrivals and actually read something myself." She gestured to a worn paperback on the counter. "Do you read much, Mr. Dot?" Jackson hesitated. For the first time in 3 years, he had the opportunity to be someone other than Jackson Reed, tech innovator and corporate target. He could be anyone, just a man in a bookstore on a rainy night. "Jack," he said finally. "Just Jack, and yes, when I have time." "What are you reading?" "The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue," she replied. "It's about a woman no one remembers after meeting her. Sometimes I wonder if that would be a curse or a blessing." "Right now it sounds like a blessing," he murmured, before he could stop himself. Olivia's eyebrow raised slightly. "Rough day?" "Rough week." Jackson sipped his hot chocolate. It was indeed therapeutic, rich and warming with just the right amount of spice. "This helps, though." "What do you do, Jack, when you're not getting drenched in unexpected downpours?" The question was innocent, but it made Jackson tense. He took another sip of chocolate before answering. "I work with computers. Web development, mostly." Not entirely a lie. He had coded the first prototype of his energy management system himself. "That explains the good shoes in terrible weather," Olivia said with a teasing smile. "Tech guys always forget practical things like umbrellas." Jackson laughed, relaxing slightly. Guilty as charged. What about you? Always been a bookstore owner? Chapters and Chai is my 3-year-old dream come true, she said, pride evident in her voice. Before this, I taught literature at the community college, but I wanted to create a space where books weren't just assignments. Their conversation flowed easily from books to movies to the neighborhood's history. For nearly 2 hours, Jackson forgot about the accusations, the press, the millions of dollars at stake. Here, he was just Jack, a man enjoying good conversation on a rainy evening. When the elderly man finally stirred and prepared to leave, Olivia glanced at the clock. I should probably start closing up. Jackson nodded, surprised at how disappointed he felt. Of course. What do I owe you? $5 for the hot chocolate. But the towel and conversation were on the house. As he paid, Jackson noticed a stack of flyers by the register advertising a community literacy program Olivia ran on weekends. An idea formed in his mind. I couldn't help but notice your website link on that flyer, he said casually. If you'd like, I could take a look at your site sometime. Professional courtesy. Olivia hesitated. That's kind, but I can't afford professional web services right now. The literacy program takes most of my extra funds. Consider it payment for rescuing a drowned rat tonight. Jackson smiled. No strings attached. Just email me what you have. He wrote his personal email, not his company one, on a napkin and handed it to her. As he stepped back into the night, the rain had gentled to a soft mist. For the first time in months, Jackson felt something like peace. He had no idea how he would maintain this deception, or if he even should, but something about Olivia and her little bookstore felt like a lifeline in the midst of chaos. What he couldn't know was that in 3 weeks' time, a single photograph would shatter this fragile sanctuary, forcing him to choose between the truth and the connection that was already beginning to feel like home. Bookmarked moments. The morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Chapters and Chai, casting golden rectangles across the hardwood floors. Olivia hummed softly as she arranged a display of new releases, occasionally glancing toward the door. It had been 2 weeks since the rainy night when Jack had first wandered into her bookstore, and he had returned every day since, sometimes for hours, sometimes just long enough for a quick coffee and hello. Today, she found herself watching the clock. He usually arrived around 10, laptop in tow, claiming her corner table had the perfect lighting for coding. Olivia wasn't entirely convinced that was the real reason. The bell above the door jingled, and she turned, unable to suppress her smile when she saw him. Jack wore dark jeans and a simple gray Henley today, his auburn hair slightly tousled. He looked nothing like the drenched stranger from that stormy evening, except for his eyes, which still carried that curious mix of warmth and wariness. "You're late," Olivia called out, trying to sound casual. "I was beginning to think you found another bookstore with superior chai." Jack placed a hand over his heart in mock offense. "There's no such thing. Besides, I come for the literary ambiance, not just the beverages." He set his laptop bag down at his usual table, though the chai is exceptional. "Flattery will get you a fresh scone to go with it," she replied, already moving toward the counter. Their morning ritual had become comfortable, almost domestic, in a way that surprised them both. As she prepared his order, Olivia watched him boot up his laptop, his expression shifting to something more serious as he began to work. She had never pressed him about what exactly he did. Web development seemed to cover a broad territory, and Jack was surprisingly vague when she asked specific questions. What she did know was that whatever project occupied him lately seemed stressful. Sometimes she caught him staring at financial news sites, quickly closing them when she approached. "Your kingdom awaits," she said, setting down his chai and scone. And I wanted to thank you again for the website. It's already bringing in new customers. Jack had completely redesigned Chapters and Chai's online presence over the past 2 weeks, creating a sleek, intuitive site that showcased her inventory and events calendar. What should have cost thousands had been given freely, along with patient tutorials on how to update it herself. It was nothing, he said, his smile genuine. Actually, I had an idea about your literacy program too. Have you ever thought about expanding it? Maybe partnering with the local shelters? Olivia leaned against the table. Constantly, but resources are the issue. Books, space, time. It all costs money I don't have. Jack nodded thoughtfully. What if you had a sponsor? Someone to cover the overhead. In this economy, businesses are cutting community programs, not funding new ones. She sighed, though it's a nice dream. Dreams have a way of becoming reality when the right people believe in them, he said quietly, with a certainty that made Olivia curious. Before she could respond, the morning rush began. Students from the nearby university, seeking caffeine and quiet corners to study. Jack retreated into his work, and Olivia was swept up in orders and recommendations. It was nearly noon when she finally had a moment to breathe. The store had emptied temporarily, and she found herself drawn back to Jack's table. He was frowning at his screen, tension evident in the set of his shoulders. Bad news? She asked softly. He startled slightly, as if he'd forgotten where he was. Just work complications. Nothing important. Olivia hesitated, then made a decision. I'm closing for lunch. Want to take a walk? There's a park across the street, and you look like you could use some fresh air. The surprise on his face melted into something like gratitude. I'd like that. The park was small, but well-maintained, with winding paths and a central fountain where pigeons gathered. They walked slowly, sharing a bag of roasted almonds Olivia had grabbed from the store. So mysterious, Jack, she began, nudging his shoulder playfully. Tell me something real, something not about work or websites. He considered this, his eyes following the path ahead. I used to build elaborate treehouses as a kid. My father thought it was a waste of time, but my mother would bring me blueprints she'd torn from magazines. A soft smile played at his lips. I think that's when I first fell in love with creating spaces. Is that why you're so good at web design? Creating digital spaces? Jack nodded. Something like that. He turned to her. Your turn. Something real. Olivia took a deep breath. I started the bookstore with my sister's life insurance money. She died 3 years ago, car accident. She was always the one with big dreams, while I played it safe. Her voice softened. Sometimes I feel like I'm living for both of us now. Without warning, Jack reached for her hand, his fingers warm against hers. I think you're doing her proud. They stood there for a moment, connected by more than just their clasp hands. Olivia felt a flutter in her chest that both excited and terrified her. We should probably head back, she said finally, reluctant to break the moment, but unsure where it might lead. The afternoon passed in a comfortable rhythm. Jack worked while Olivia tended to customers, occasionally exchanging glances or sharing brief conversations when the store emptied. By closing time, something had shifted between them, a boundary crossed, though neither acknowledged it directly. As Jack packed up his laptop, Olivia found herself not wanting the day to end. There's a little Italian place around the corner, she said, trying to sound nonchalant. They make a decent carbonara if you're hungry. I'd love to, but I have a work call tonight. The regret in his voice seemed genuine, but Olivia couldn't help noticing his hesitation. Another time, then. Jack paused at the door. Tomorrow, I could pick you up after closing. It's a date, she replied, then immediately felt her cheeks warm. I mean, I hope so, he said quietly, and then he was gone, leaving Olivia to wonder about the man who had so quickly become a fixture in her daily life. What she didn't know was that Jack had indeed gone to attend a conference call, one where his lawyers updated him on the ongoing investigation into the false allegations against his company. The stock was falling, and board members were nervous. His brief respite at Chapters and Chai was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. As Jackson Reed stared at financial projections and crisis management strategies late into the night, his thoughts kept drifting back to Olivia, to her honesty, her passion, her hand in his. The weight of his deception grew heavier with each passing day, but the thought of losing this new connection, this sanctuary he'd found, terrified him more than any corporate scandal. Tomorrow would be their first real date, and Jackson found himself wishing he could truly be just Jack, the man Olivia was beginning to care for, not the billionaire whose face might appear on tomorrow's business pages alongside accusations and speculation. Little did he know that their carefully constructed bubble was already beginning to thin, and truth, like light, would soon find its way through the cracks.
H2. The exposed chapter. The night of their date had been perfect. Almost too perfect. Olivia smiled at the memory as she unlocked Chapters and Chai early Monday morning. Jack had taken her to a small rooftop restaurant with twinkling lights and a jazz trio, where they'd talked until the staff began stacking chairs around them. The way he'd looked at her across the candlelit table had made her heart race, and their goodnight kiss on her doorstep still lingered on her lips. But something nagged at her. Moments of hesitation when she asked about his past, a careful redirection when the conversation veered toward his work. The way he'd tensed when a business news segment had played on the restaurant's television. "You're being paranoid," she muttered to herself as she flipped on the lights. Jack was private, that was all. Not everyone shared their life story after a few weeks. The early morning routine calmed her doubts. She brewed fresh coffee, arranged pastries in the display case, and opened a box of new mystery novels for shelving. Outside, the city was coming to life, traffic increasing as the workday began. Olivia was reaching for the highest shelf when the bell chimed, announcing her first customer, far earlier than usual. "We just opened, but the coffee's fresh," she called out, turning with a welcoming smile that quickly faded. It wasn't a customer. It was Naomi, her best friend and local investigative reporter, clutching a newspaper with an expression Olivia couldn't quite read. "Please tell me you've seen this," Naomi said, without preamble, dropping the business section on the counter. Olivia approached slowly, a sense of foreboding building as she recognized a familiar profile in the grainy photograph. The headline read, "Tech Billionaire Jackson Reed Finds Solace Amid Scandal." Below it was an unmistakable image of Jack, her Jack, leaving Chapters and Chai, caught in profile as he glanced back toward the store, toward her. "That's him, isn't it?" Naomi pressed. "Your mystery man who's been hanging around for weeks? The one you went out with Saturday night?" Olivia couldn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the article. While Reed Energy Solutions battles accusations of corporate espionage, its reclusive founder appears to have found a personal distraction. Sources report that tech innovator Jackson Reed, 33, has been frequenting a downtown bookstore, developing a close relationship with its owner. Reed, whose net worth exceeds $2.3 billion despite recent stock declines, has previously avoided public relationships. The words blurred as Olivia's eyes filled with tears of confusion and anger. Her hands shook as she pushed the paper away. I don't understand, she whispered. His name is Jack. He's a web developer. Naomi's expression softened with sympathy. His name is Jackson Reed. He founded Reed Energy Solutions 6 years ago, after developing breakthrough battery technology. He's been all over the business news lately because a competitor accused his company of stealing proprietary data. She hesitated. He's one of the richest men in the country, Liv. The bell chimed again, and they both turned. Jackson, stood in the doorway, his expression stricken when he saw the newspaper on the counter. He was dressed differently today, in a tailored suit that suddenly seemed to reveal his true identity more than any photograph could. Olivia, he began, taking a step forward. I can explain. I think you'd better, she said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice, despite the storm raging inside her. Starting with your real name. Naomi looked between them. I should go. Call me later, Liv. She squeezed Olivia's arm before slipping past Jackson, who hadn't moved from the entrance. After the door closed, silence stretched between them, broken only by the soft hiss of the coffee machine. You should put the closed sign up, Jackson finally said, unless you want this conversation to happen in front of your morning regulars. Wordlessly, Olivia moved to the door, flipping the sign and drawing the blinds. When she turned back, Jackson had removed his suit jacket and loosened his tie, as if shedding the costume he'd arrived in. I wanted to tell you, he said quietly. Every day, it got harder not to. Then why didn't you? The hurt in her voice was unmistakable. Was it amusing to watch me think you were just a regular guy? Did you laugh about the struggling bookstore owner when you went home to your mansion? No. The vehemence in his response startled them both. It was never like that. It was never like that. He ran a hand through his hair. It was the opposite. When I'm here, with you, it's the only time I feel real. Olivia crossed her arms. Explain. Jackson gestured to one of the reading nooks, and after a moment's hesitation, she followed him. They sat across from each other, the small coffee table between them like a demilitarized zone. Everything in the article is technically true, he began. I founded Reed Energy Solutions after developing a more efficient energy storage system. We've grown faster than anyone expected, and now we're valued in the billions. He leaned forward. What the article doesn't say is that 3 weeks ago, Gerald Mercer of Pinnacle Tech accused us of stealing their research data. Did you? Olivia asked bluntly. The question seemed to cut him. No. We've been developing this technology independently for years. But Mercer is well connected, and suddenly, we're under investigation. Our stock is plummeting, investors are panicking, and reporters have been camped outside my home. He looked down at his hands. That night, when my car broke down in the storm, I just left an emergency board meeting. Everyone was looking at me for answers I didn't have. I was drowning in accusations and doubt. His eyes met hers, vulnerable and sincere. Then I walked into your store, and you looked at me like I was just a person who needed a towel and some kindness. Do you know how long it's been since someone looked at me that way? Olivia remained silent, fighting the impulse to comfort him. I told myself it was just one night, one conversation, but then I came back, and it felt like breathing for the first time in years. His voice softened. I should have told you the truth after the first week. I knew that. But I was afraid of losing this, of losing you. So instead you built a relationship on lies, Olivia said, the hurt evident in her voice. Everything you told me about yourself, was any of it true? Almost all of it, Jackson insisted. I did build tree houses as a kid. I did study computer science. I do prefer paperbacks to hardcovers. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The only thing I lied about was my name and the specifics of my work. Everything else, everything between us, has been real. Olivia stood up abruptly. You don't get it, do you? You took away my choice. You decided what truth I could handle. That's not how relationships work. She moved toward the counter, needing distance. And now I'm in the newspaper. Billionaire's distraction. Did you think about what this would do to me? To my reputation? To my business? The color drained from Jackson's face. I never wanted that. I've been so careful. He stopped, realization dawning. Someone must have followed me. This is exactly what I was trying to protect you from. I don't need your protection, Olivia said firmly. I needed your honesty. Jackson stood, taking a tentative step toward her. You're right, I was wrong. But please believe me when I say my feelings for you are genuine. What we had, she corrected him. What we had. The finality in her voice made him flinch. Olivia, please, give me a chance to make this right. She looked at him for a long moment, seeing both the man she had grown to care for and the stranger from the newspaper. I need time to think. And you need to leave. Jackson nodded slowly, retrieving his jacket. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, those weeks with you were the most honest of my life. After he left, Olivia sank into a chair, emotions warring within her. The newspaper still lay on the counter, the photo capturing a moment when she'd believed in something that wasn't entirely real. Outside, Jackson walked past the sleek company car, waiting for him, ignoring his driver's confused calls. He needed to think, to find a way forward through the mess he'd created, both professionally and personally. The investigation into his company continued. But, for the first time since it began, that wasn't his primary concern. He had lost something far more valuable than stock points today. And unlike business negotiations, he wasn't sure if this was something money or power could fix. What Jackson didn't realize was that across town, Gerald Mercer was reading the same newspaper article with growing interest. The notorious competitor smiled as he reached for his phone. Get me everything you can on this bookstore owner, he instructed his assistant. I think we just found Reed's weakness. The game was changing, and Olivia was now unwittingly at its center. Words unwritten. H2. 3 days had passed since Olivia had last seen Jackson. 3 days of fielding curious questions from regular customers who had seen the newspaper article, of ignoring calls from unknown numbers likely belonging to reporters, of replaying every conversation she'd had with Jack and wondering how she could have missed the signs. The bell above the door chimed constantly as curious onlookers wandered in, rarely buying anything, but always scanning the store, as if expecting to find a billionaire hiding between the bookshelves. Business had actually increased, but for all the wrong reasons. You should capitalize on this, Naomi suggested over lunch in the back room of the bookstore. A billionaire's choice reading list or something. Olivia shot her a withering look. I'm not exploiting this situation. I just want it to go away. Has he tried to contact you? Olivia hesitated, then nodded toward her phone. Texts, emails, flower deliveries to my apartment that I've sent back. She picked at her salad. A courier even brought over legal documents proving his company's innocence in that corporate espionage case, as if that was the issue. Isn't it partly? Naomi asked. You were upset that he might be a corporate thief. I was upset that he lied to me for weeks, Olivia corrected. The rest is just context. After Naomi left, Olivia found herself staring at the corner table where Jackson had spent so many hours working. His deception still stung, but she couldn't deny the emptiness his absence had created. She was restocking a shelf when a man in an expensive suit entered the store, flanked by two others who positioned themselves near the door like sentries. "Ms. Winters," the man approached with a practiced smile. "Gerald Mercer, Pinnacle Technologies. Might I have a moment of your time?" Olivia instantly recognized the name from Jackson's explanation. His competitor, the one who had accused Reed Energy Solutions of theft. Wariness crept up her spine. "I'm afraid I'm quite busy," she replied coolly. "This won't take long," Mercer assured her, glancing around the nearly empty store with raised eyebrows. "I have a proposition that could benefit us both." Against her better judgment, Olivia led him to a table far from other customers. "What kind of proposition?" Mercer's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I understand you've had a personal relationship with Jackson Reed. That's none of your business." "Perhaps not, but it could be profitable for you." He slid a folder across the table. "Reed's company has been developing technology suspiciously similar to ours. We believe he stole our research." Olivia made no move to touch the folder. And if you happen to have heard anything during your time together, any mention of proprietary technology, unusual meetings, late-night work sessions, such information would be extremely valuable to us. Realization dawned. "You're asking me to spy on him? For money?" Mercer chuckled. "Not spy. Just share what you already know. A simple statement supporting our suspicions could be worth, say, $500,000. Enough to expand your literacy program quite significantly." Olivia stared at him, disgust churning in her stomach. "I think you should leave." "Don't be hasty, Miss Winters. Reed lied to you for weeks. He used you as a distraction while his company was imploding. He doesn't deserve your loyalty." "This isn't about loyalty to him," Olivia said, standing. "This is about my integrity, which isn't for sale." She nodded toward the door. "Please leave before I call security." Mercer's pleasant facade vanished. "You're making a mistake. Reed is going down, with or without your help. Then do it without my help, and without setting foot in my store again." After Mercer and his entourage departed, Olivia locked herself in the bathroom, hands trembling as the encounter replayed in her mind. She reached for her phone, almost without thinking, scrolling to Jackson's last message. "I understand you need space. Just know I'm doing everything I can to make this right. Not just for us, but for the truth." For the first time, she typed a response. "Gerald Mercer just offered me money to lie about you." The reply came within seconds. "Are you safe?" The genuine concern in those 3 words broke something inside her. "Yes, but I think you should know what he's doing. Can I come see you, please?" Olivia stared at the screen, torn between the hurt that still lingered and the undeniable fact that despite everything, she missed him. The store closes at 8. Jackson arrived precisely at 8:01, as the last customer was leaving. He looked different, tired, with shadows under his eyes and his usual confident posture slightly diminished. But the way he looked at her hadn't changed. "Thank you for warning me about Mercer," he said after she locked the door behind him, "and for agreeing to see me." Olivia crossed her arms, maintaining distance between them. "I didn't do it for you. What he did was wrong, regardless of how I feel about you." Jackson nodded solemnly. How are you doing with all of this?" "Oh, just wonderful. I've had journalists calling, strangers coming into the store to gawk, and now corporate espionage solicitations. My quiet life is thriving." "I'm so sorry," he said, the genuine remorse in his voice making it hard for Olivia to maintain her anger. I never wanted any of this to touch you. That's the problem, Jackson. You decided what I could handle without asking me. You took away my agency. He winced at her use of his full name. You're right, I did. And I've had a lot of time these past few days to think about why. He moved to the reading nook where they'd sat during their last conversation. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia followed. The night we met, Jackson began, I was at my lowest point. Everything I'd built was under attack, and I felt completely alone, despite being surrounded by lawyers and executives and PR teams. His eyes met hers. Then I walked in here, and you looked at me with such genuine kindness. No agenda, no expectations. So you lied to preserve that, Olivia said. I lied because I'm a coward, Jackson corrected. Because the truth is, I've been Jackson Reed Tech Billionaire for so long that I'd forgotten how to just be me. With you, I remembered. He leaned forward, earnest. I should have trusted you with the truth. I didn't, because I was afraid of losing the one real connection I'd found. Olivia felt her resolve weakening, but forced herself to focus on facts. What about the accusations? Are they true? Jackson shook his head firmly. No, and we can prove it now. He pulled out his phone, showing her a news article dated that morning. Whistleblower reveals Mercer's plot against Reed Energy. A former Pinnacle employee came forward with evidence that Mercer fabricated the whole thing to tank our stock and attempt a hostile takeover, Jackson explained. Our legal team is filing countersuits tomorrow. I'm glad, Olivia said softly, but that doesn't fix what happened between us. I know. Jackson reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn notebook. This is my journal. Everything about me. My childhood, my fears, my dreams, my failures, it's all in here. He placed it on the table between them. I want you to read it. All of it. No more secrets, no more half-truths. Olivia stared at the journal, understanding the vulnerability of his gesture. I don't need your whole life story, Jackson. I just needed honesty. He said simply, if you'll let me. She didn't respond immediately, and Jackson didn't press. Instead, he stood, leaving the journal on the table. Whether or not you read it, whether or not you ever want to see me again, I want you to know something. His voice was steady, but filled with emotion. These past weeks with you weren't just an escape for me. They were a homecoming. You reminded me of who I am, beyond the wealth and the company. He moved toward the door. Take all the time you need. As he reached for the handle, Olivia called out, the literacy program. Jackson turned, confusion evident on his face. Mercer thought he could buy me with funding for my literacy program, she explained. It made me realize something. The program isn't just about books. It's about truth, giving people the tools to find it for themselves. She took a deep breath. I don't want your money, but if you're serious about making things right, maybe we could build something honest together. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was an opening. And for now, that was enough. H2. The final page. 6 weeks later, Olivia stood in the community center, attached to Chapters and Chai, surveying the transformed space with a mixture of pride and amazement. What had once been a cramped storage room, with comfortable reading areas, computer stations, and shelves stocked with books for all ages. The grand opening was scheduled for tomorrow, and everywhere she looked, volunteers were putting final touches on displays and technology setups. At the center of it all, Kneeling to help a group of children arrange a reading corner was Jackson. He looked up, catching her eye across the room, and smiled. That same warm smile that had first drawn her in on a rainy night months ago. But now there was no deception behind it, no careful editing of the truth. Just Jackson, who had spent these weeks proving through actions rather than words that he was worthy of a second chance. Their path to reconciliation hadn't been simple or swift. After their confrontation in the bookstore, Olivia had indeed read his journal, finding within its pages the unvarnished story of a boy who'd grown up with a demanding father, who'd found solace in creation rather than connection, who'd built an empire but lost himself in the process. She had contacted him a week later, suggesting coffee, not at her store, but on neutral ground. That first conversation had been awkward, tentative, both of them careful with their words. But it had led to another, and then another. Meanwhile, the world had moved on. The scandal surrounding Reed Energy Solutions had faded, as evidence of Mercer's machinations came to light. Jackson's company had not only recovered, but strengthened, with new ethical business practices that he credited partly to conversations with Olivia about responsibility and transparency. The Literacy Center had been his idea, but he'd been careful to present it not as a grand gesture of atonement, but as a partnership. Not a donation, he'd insisted, but a collaboration. Your expertise, my resources. Now, watching him interact with the children, Olivia felt the last pieces of her hesitation falling away. This was the man she'd glimpsed beneath the deception, someone who cared deeply, who wanted to create something meaningful, who had simply forgotten how to be vulnerable in a world that rewarded strength above all else. As the volunteers began to disperse, Jackson approached her, his expression questioning. "What do you think? Ready for tomorrow?" "More than ready," she replied. "It's everything I hoped it would be." They walked together through the center, making final checks on supplies and technology. The easy companionship that had characterized their early days had returned, but with a new foundation of honesty that made it stronger. Outside, twilight was settling over the city. Jackson hesitated by the door, a now familiar uncertainty crossing his features. Despite the progress they'd made, he still sometimes held back, afraid of presuming too much. "Would you like to get dinner?" Olivia asked, making the decision for both of them. "There's that new Thai place down the street." Relief and happiness lit up his face. "I'd love that." The restaurant was busy, but not crowded, with soft lighting and quiet conversation creating an intimate atmosphere. As they settled into their booth, Olivia noticed several patrons glancing their way with recognition. "Still getting used to that," she commented, nodding toward the onlookers. Jackson grimaced slightly. "I'm sorry. It comes with the territory, but it does fade. They'll find something more interesting to talk about eventually." "I don't mind as much anymore," Olivia admitted. "Not now that I know what I'm getting into." Their conversation flowed easily throughout dinner, touching on the Literacy Center, book recommendations, and plans for expanding the program to more communities. It was only when they were sharing dessert that Jackson broached the subject they'd been circling around for weeks. "I've been thinking about what you said that night in the bookstore," he began carefully. "About building something honest together." Olivia nodded, feeling a flutter of anticipation. "I want you to know that I'm committed to that, not just with the Literacy Center, but with us." He reached across the table, tentatively taking her hand. "I've spent my life building things, Olivia. Companies, technologies, systems. But nothing has ever felt as important as rebuilding what I broke with you." "You didn't break it beyond repair," she said softly. "Cracked it, maybe. But we've been mending it pretty well, don't you think? The hope in his eyes was unmistakable. Does that mean? It means I'm ready to turn the page, Olivia said, squeezing his hand. To start a new chapter, one where we both know exactly who we are and what we want. Jackson's smile was worth every moment of doubt, every difficult conversation they'd navigated. And what do you want, Olivia Winters? The truth, she replied simply. Always. Even when it's complicated or messy or difficult. You have my word, he promised. No more secrets. As they left the restaurant, walking hand in hand toward the bookstore, Olivia felt a sense of rightness settle over her. Life with Jackson wouldn't always be simple. There would be public scrutiny, busy schedules, the inevitable complications that came with his position. But now, they would face those challenges together, with open eyes and honest hearts. Sentence. Back at Chapters and Chai, Jackson pulled her close under the soft glow of the storefront lights. I love you, he said quietly, the words both a confession and a promise. The real me loves the real you. No pretense, no hiding. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me, Olivia replied, rising on her tiptoes to kiss him. Above them, the sign for the newly expanded Chapter's End. Chai glowed warmly, with smaller text beneath it reading, Home of the Truth in Literacy Foundation. It was a testament to what they had built together, not just a program or a business, but a shared purpose founded on the belief that truth, however difficult, was always worth pursuing. As Jackson held her close, Olivia thought about the winding path that had brought them here. The rain-soaked stranger who had walked into her store, the lies that had almost torn them apart, and the courageous honesty that had ultimately saved them. Their story hadn't followed a straight line, but the best ones rarely did. Tomorrow, they would open the Literacy Center's doors to the community. Tomorrow, they would begin a new venture together. But tonight, in this moment, they were simply two people who had found their way through deception to truth, through hurt to healing, and through caution to love. And that, Olivia thought as Jackson's arms tightened around her, was a story worth keeping.